Hi, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Dan Marek. I'm Ruby's Director of Plant-Based Culinary and Development. Really excited to be here for this conversation, especially because it's about teaching, community, and plant-based cooking, which are all really close to my heart. As usual, on our live events here, you are able to ask questions of us. My cohort today is Char Nolan, who I'll introduce in just a moment. But you can ask questions just by clicking on the right hand side in the little box there, just where it says add question here. You can ask a question, hit the add button, and our moderator will go through it. It'll be added to our queue on the right hand side. If there's a question that you'd like to be answered quickly, just hit the little heart icon on the right hand side of the questions that you see on the side, and it'll bring it up to the top of our queue there. So we're going to ask that we answer our questions at the end of this event. So Shar and I will be going through this a little bit, and then ask or answer your questions at the end. So, a little bit of an overview of our event. Today's live conversation is called the Chef Instructor Playbook, and we're going to walk through what it really takes from planning and setting up teaching strategies and visual examples. Whether you're brand new to teaching or looking to refine your approach, our goal is to really give you some practical takeaways so you can use right away. We're thrilled that you're here today. So, thanks for joining us. We'll be sharing some talking points, showing photos from real teaching events that both Shar and I have done, and reflecting on what works and what we've learned along the way. So let's jump right in. First of all, I'd love to introduce Shar. So I'm thrilled to introduce her. She's a Ruby instructor, Char Nolan. Char's a great friend of mine as well. She's a certified plant-based chef, health educator, and instructor with a deep experience teaching cooking classes and culinary events. She studied at studied public health at Temple University. Is currently completing her master's degree. I'm not going to be able to say the name of the college because I'll totally butcher it, but she can pitch in when she needs to here in Philadelphia. She also holds a certificate in nutrition studies at the Cornell University. She brings a thoughtful, practical approach to plant-based education, making it approachable, skill-driven, and empowering students. Char, I'm glad you're here. Thanks for joining us.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad that this has come to fruition because we get to interact a lot with one another in meetings and phone calls and other things. So I think this is nice, and being able to bring our experiences together, I think will give today's audience a really good background about setting up classes and working on the outside of a kitchen and other things like that. So it's really a pleasure to be here. And I think it's going to be fun because we get asked this question how many times a day? So many. So it's kind of fun. So thank you for that. I want to introduce Dan because I think if you are a Ruby student, you may have seen his name on your review, on your review of your assignment and other things like that. But I don't know if Dan remembers this, but I met Dan in 2010 when he was an instructor at an immersion with Rip Esselstyn, joining Chef Chad Sarno. And I remember sitting in the room watching him teach and thinking how he brought what he was doing in his task, how he brought it to his audience so that I didn't feel that there was that window that can sometimes keep an audience separated from its instructor. And I thought, oh, that's a really good technique to use. I'm going to keep that in mind. Dan, like myself, has been at Ruby for 6 years. I describe him as the Swiss knife of Ruby because Dan does everything and he does it very, very well. He is involved in community endeavors. He worked with the Whole Kids Foundation at Whole Foods Market, which was a part of Whole Foods that educated teachers and children in the community about cooking and good nutrition. He is a board member on several different organizations, including Slow Food and the, REAP. So he does everything. He's busy exercising. He's a dad, and he is at Ruby, always at our beck and call. So it's really a pleasure to work with Dan and sort of have him share his expertise with everybody on the instructional team. So Dan, I'm happy that we're together today. So that's good.
definitely. So hopefully you guys will learn a lot from watching.
Yeah. And I wanted to just talk a little bit about my own background as a plant-based certified chef, and having graduated from Rouxbe in 2015 and feeling as though it was going to be something that would add to my resume and complement my other experiences, but sort of help me shine in something that I really love to do, which is teaching and cooking. And when I graduated, I called a friend of mine and I said, I have a great idea. How about if you and I do a pop-up dinner at your restaurant? And he was kind enough to say yes. But then what happened is that the producer of Plant Pure Nation, the documentary that came out in 2015 by Nelson Campbell, they were passing through Philadelphia, and his name is John Corey, and he knew that I had done some work with other documentaries. So I invited him to dinner at the restaurant, and we cooked this gorgeous meal for 12 people. And I remember the chef at the restaurant saying, wow, you really know what you're doing. And I felt that was a huge, gigantic compliment for having attended an online culinary school. So from that, that's how my own career began. And I will share with you that it's really important to take advantage of things that go wrong. And I was working with a woman who was unable to make an event where she was going to teach people how to water saute onions. So I went in her place, and the next day, the director of the Culinary Institute of Philadelphia called me up and said, hey, would you like to teach? And since then, I've been working on a Charlie cart in South Philadelphia. My most fun recent event as a Rouxbe grad was to be part of a 2-year CDC program that addressed the benefits of a whole food plant-based diet on the chronically ill in underserved communities. So there I was, and who took me there? My Rouxbe education. So I'm going to get off of my soapbox, but just to say that the foundation of Rouxbe education is just as good as I am experiencing in graduate school, and I say that with all of my heart. So it's common sense. Everything you learn at Rouxbe, you're going to set up a mise en place, you're going to lay out your tools. But the one thing that people always want to know is, how do I get my foot in the door? So we'll be talking a little bit about that as we go through. I think that using common sense is the most important thing. And I'm going to just show you one of the most critical things that I take with me in my cooking kit. In parentheses, if you can find a Charlie cart in your neighborhood, and there are 658 Charlie carts in America, if you can find a Charlie cart, it is a 600-pound kitchen on wheels. And it has everything in it, from a Breville oven, from a induction stovetop, pots, pans, a Vitamix, knives, cutting boards. It has a sink if you choose to use that, and it makes life very easy. Going out into the community to teach your own cooking classes is different, but that's why you always want to go, if you're going to teach at a church or a firehouse or wherever, you always want to go there first so that you can survey the lay of the land and see what you will actually need. So the Charlie cart is a dream. And I have what I call a Charlene cart, so that if I'm teaching off campus somewhere else, I just pull this out of the garage and clean things up and take it with me. And it has an induction stovetop. And the reason why I choose induction over gas is because there are no wasted cans and there are no open flames, which can be a hazard in some communities because they don't want you to have an open flame. So
first experience in doing cooking demonstrations was at Whole Foods Market as well. And for the job, they didn't actually do cooking demonstrations in the store at that time. And I actually built something like the cart that you're describing. It was a big cart, but basically had a lot of storage underneath. And I built these two things on the side that had a rotating mirror that you'd normally put on your wall on the top
Yeah,
of
yeah,
it, so
yeah.
you could look at it from the side. I did use
Oh,
a regular burner on the top of that as well, but that was my first journey as becoming a health eating specialist, which I know you were too for Whole Foods Market. So it was a fun experience kind of jumping in. And that's a great transition actually into how to get your foot in the door too, to be able to say, like, okay, how can we actually start getting into this, using the tools that our students have at the moment, to be able to jump into doing their own culinary demonstrations too.
can I give one quick tip that everyone loves?
Of course.
Um, Women love to gather with their friends. And so soon after I graduated, I sent notes to 10 friends and said, you'll find my business card inside. I'm now, working as a plant-based chef. I'd love to come to your house and meet with 4 to 6 of your friends. Here's the cost. Here's what we can make. Oh, and by the way, your ticket is free because that is my gift to you for providing me with a kitchen for the evening. And you know what? It was the most popular thing I have ever
Yeah.
done. And COVID came and we took a hiatus, but then I sent notes out again after that. And I have the same menu as long as they don't go to the same house, twice, which I would then redo. But people absolutely love it. Somebody might bring wine. They'll set up the
Mhm.
table beautifully and they eat a delicious dinner. And as you know, Dan, people will always eat whatever it is that they make.
Absolutely. That's kids included. That's one of the great things to be able to, kind of transition into the demonstration and the teaching of cooking. I really started out as that kind of the plant-based chef as well, but really being a personal chef and helping people with that. And then that kind of turned into a little bit more theater as well.
Mhm.
When I would either bring food in or start to be able to cook things in kitchens, a lot of people asked if they could bring their friends over for dinner to be able to kind of see what was happening with those. And they kind of evolved from there. So I think that those are great ways to be able to transition, as a student going into helping out some friends, getting a group together. I also think it's really important too to be able to, when you're talking about doing cooking demonstrations, to be able to set the bar kind of lower for yourself, so it makes it easier. So I think your point of starting out with friends is a great way to be able to start in. You might want to start with that and not even worry about the payment on it. Think of it as you're inviting your friends over for dinner, and you can do it at your own house, right? But instead of having everything ready by the time they get there, say, look, I'm inviting you over for dinner, but we're going to do it together, and I'm going to show you how to make this. And you can, plan it yourself to be able to do things that you want to do, or you can ask them, what would you like to learn to make, and to be able to help
Mhm.
them kind of make those steps ahead of time. Now, that's a great way to be able to get your candor going, to be able to get. You'll figure out really fast some of the things that you need to do on this at a professional level, right? So before people even come, you want to be able to have certain things done, like your mise en place, right? So you don't want to spend, if it's 2 hours for the demonstration or the dinner or something like that, you don't want to spend an hour of it just chopping up stuff, right? So being able to have some of your stuff all set up, things allocated for how much you're going to need. If you're making a pasta, knowing how much of that you're actually going to be doing, having the certain pots, pans, knives, cutting boards, everything else that you need to be able to have already out and set to be able to have. So when everybody comes in, you have a very clean space that feels welcoming at the same time too. So you can have little stations set up for people, so everybody has their
Mhm.
kind of place. It's always nice to have a little name tag too, if you know everybody that's going to be there, to be able to have their name so they know where they can set set up, give them maybe an apron to be able to put on so they don't get anything on their clothes as well. So it's a great way to be able to start welcoming people into the environment of doing a cooking demonstration. So I think that's a great way, the way you started, and that it sounds like I've had the same experience in doing that as well. And that led to, countless other cooking demonstrations, from evolving from just doing it at people's houses. I started doing it in grocery stores and then at
Mhm.
culinary centers and then eventually to culinary schools, which led me to working at Ruby at the same time. It just kind of evolved over time, but it just kept building on the core principles of just really looking at what you have in front of you, building that out, and building up your cooking demonstrations.
To that point, the other thing, before I do a class or a personal private class in someone's home, I do a survey of allergies, likes, dislikes, but specifically focusing on the allergy part, because I
Mhm.
think that's a very valuable tool. And also, we'll talk a little bit later about the importance of having food handlers insurance and how that is another important component to what it is that you would do. I have Patrick showing us a setup of a classroom that I did in North Philadelphia in the poorest per capita income in the city of $15,000 a year. And I went to the dollar store and got cutting boards, and I've got gloves. Everybody always needs to have gloves. And we had a wonderful lesson because kale gets such a bad rap. They learned how to strip kale. And then at the end of the lesson, they made beautiful, beautiful sandwiches with hummus and tomatoes and kale that had been massaged, and it had lemon added to it, just like the assignment. I wonder where I got that idea from. And every single person who came to the class who was reluctant to being there uh, was so proud of what they made, so proud that they ate the kale. And classes went on like that. It was supposed to last for 2 years, and then COVID came. So, guess what? The day before the class, I would drop off all food to the clinic, and then we would meet on Zoom and we would have a cooking class together. And Zoom cooking classes is where I learned everything I needed to know about, I'll use an old people's term, audiovisual, what connectors to bring, always take an extension cord, and things like that. But
Yeah.
you can see, as Dan described, having an organized and welcoming. And I believe that on the screen there was like, welcome to Chef Char's class. And so you just want to set a warm and friendly tone. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think
I
that
think
that.
you hit the nail
Go
on the
ahead.
head right there with like the dietary restrictions is something you need to be able to get away. You need to make sure right away that you have a firm understanding of it. Because if anybody does have any dietary restrictions, you want to make sure that you avoid those completely. In fact, if I know that somebody has a dietary restriction in the group, I'm usually going to avoid that ingredient for the entire group. That way, they don't feel left out. Everybody's on the same level, so to say, so it doesn't really exclude anybody at the same time. So looking at those dietary restrictions is a great way to be able to do that, and it also keeps you on your toes as a chef to be able to say like, okay, I was planning on doing this. What can I do to be able to get around that environment? And to your point again, that space, I think that setting up your space when you're going into it is a great idea. A lot of times when you're going into places, you might not know exactly what the space is going to look like before you get there. So it's good to ask a
Mhm.
lot of questions of whoever is hosting if it's not you, or if you've never been there before, right? So to Char's point, if having a big welcome thing on there, are you going to have a projector behind you? Are you going to be talking about things that you need like a PDF or maybe a PowerPoint for on a projector or on a screen or something like that? If you do you have the proper cables to be able to hook up to those screens? Are you bringing your own laptop? Are you bringing a thumb drive to be able to put in those? So a lot of those are things you need to be able to discuss beforehand. Now, is that's more if you're doing like beyond cooking as well. Another one, a thing you want to think about too is, can you physically cook in the space? I've actually gone to cooking demonstrations before, set up and I have a burner and I'm cooking, and then somebody comes in and it's like, oh, you're not allowed to cook in here. It's like, well, there's no ventilation system. And I'm like, okay, you hired me to come do a cooking demonstration, but I can't cook in this room. Why am I in this room? Right. So thinking about those things ahead of time, asking a lot of questions. What we ended up doing in that cooking demonstration instead was made raw dishes. So I didn't actually have to cook anything over a burner. I just had to adapt. So those are big questions. Knowing what your space looks like, how it's going to interact, and how your students are going to interact in it is a huge thing before you even walk in the door, to be able to just realize how it's going to flow for yourself at the same time. So along with those dietary restrictions too, you want to think about menu selection and recipe scaling. Are you going to be having people do their own individual dish? Or are you going to be having them do part of a dish that makes up a bigger meal at the same time? So there are a lot of different considerations to kind of think about in those. And then also, how long is it going to take to be able to make your completed meal? Right. So we had talked about making mise en place. So you have all your ingredients and everything kind of chopped up ahead of time if possible. Now you're doing that to be able to make sure that you actually have adequate time to be able to show the techniques of the cooking element of it, to be able to make sure at the end of it, you actually have a meal for people to be able to try, right? You might sit down to the meal. It might be something where they take it and do like take it somewhere else to be able to eat it as well. But you need to be able to allot the time, to make sure the students have the time to be able to go through it. Because you're a professional, it's going to take you a lot less time to cook this meal than your students are. So you almost have to double, sometimes triple the amount of time that it would take you to be able to do a meal, to be able to teach other people how to do it, and varying components of those meals too. So sometimes it is easier to be able to split it up and have multiple people and work on one part of a dish, and then other people work on a different dish to be able to come together to have a big dish at the end. I do want to say it's always best to be able to have everybody learn all the techniques. So if possible, having everybody seeing each one of those techniques that you're going through to learn and get the most out of those too.
I wanted to add to that about time, because time is crucial. And as you know, when you're teaching a class, even if you have a stop clock in front of you, time moves so quickly. So
It
from
does.
my health education days, 1 hour of instruction equals 3 hours of prep time. So if you are teaching a 90-minute class, you will need to have 4.5 hours of prep time. And that includes planning your menu, shopping for the food for your menu, uh, doing a partial mise en place, having all the ingredients on hand, etc. And as Dan had mentioned, I always set people up into groups of 4. I never teach more than 16 people at a time, because if you don't have an assistant with you,
It's a
I
good
can
point.
manage 16 people, but that's something that you have to think about. But there's also another reason why I break into groups of 4, and I bring 4 chef knives with me, like real chef knives, and they are 4 different colors. So I will have the red group, the green group, the orange group, whatever colors they are. So this way, at the end of teaching that part of the class, I can easily say, okay, each group, could you please bring me your chef knives with you? Because there are some communities that you might teach in where you have to sort of amplify your safety, and that it would go beyond using a fire extinguisher or something like that. But here's the best thing that I love about setting up the small groups. And I have a tendency in the city to work with older adults. I like to call it peer education, because they like what I teach and say things like, oh, we like you, Chef Char, because you get our jokes. So the camaraderie that develops is one of the most beautiful things that I have ever seen. Sometimes in older adult communities, isolation becomes rampant. So they know that every Thursday at 2 o'clock, they're going to be at the Philadelphia Library with Chef Char. And they bring takeaway containers, because they're going to save what they make for dinner. So we always make a 4-course meal. We make a group making the salad. We have a group making the dessert. We have a group preparing an appetizer. So everybody feels like they have made something in this meal. And the din in the room sometimes is I have to like flick the lights off like I did when I was a school teacher so that the noise volume can come down because we're in a library. So
I
those
love
are
that.
just a couple of practical things. So
Yeah, you bring up a good point though. You know, for I have my own way of kind of knowing exactly what kind of like equipment and essentials and like nice to
mhm,
have tools versus needed tools. You know, and I know
mhm.
that you work with the Charlie cart a lot, which kind of is an all inclusive. It brings everything to you, and I love the Charlie cart. We were talking the other day. I first was introduced to the Charlie cart at Alice Waters' Edible Schoolyard when I was teaching there too, which was a fantastic thing. So if you haven't seen the Charlie cart, definitely check it out. I know that Char will shout the benefits of the Charlie cart from the top of the Philadelphia roofs as long as she can. But to go back to equipment essentials, if you don't have the Charlie cart, what are some of the things that you like to be able to set up for people to use as far as tools and hands-on activities basically during the classes? What are some of your go-to things that you think are essential to be able to set up for the students?
I'm sorry. Could you kind of blacked
Yeah.
out a little bit in my ear? Sorry
Oh,
about that.
sorry, that's okay. I was just saying, what are some of like I have my own kind of list of things that I set up for people, but what would you say are some of the essential equipment needs for people when you're coming in when you're doing a class? What are the you have to have these things at their stations to be able to have a successful class? What are some of the things that you would say that you would set up? I mean, just to start off like a knife and a cutting board, but what else beyond those would you kind of go on to be able to have as essentials?
Well, aside from, of course, a good sharp knife that will cut well,
Mhm.
I like to have. I'm fortunate to teach in classrooms that have big screens so that I can hook up photos and whatever. But I think we like to save the scraps when we make vegetables and stuff so that somebody can take the vegetable scraps to make a soup. But you kind of have to match your go-to help utensils and stuff to match the stages of the recipe that you're going to make. So I, for example, try to make it simple and easy. I'm fortunate that the Charlie card has a Vitamix. When I go to a place without a Vitamix, I take a small blender that I find very, very helpful. Things like
Mhm.
hand soap and paper towels to make sure that hand washing remains. I also take with me, which I get at the restaurant store, but gloves because gloves must be worn. I
Absolutely,
ask
yeah.
people to also pull their hair back. Uh, People who have taken classes with me have never seen my hair because it's always bundled up and covered up because hair, as you
Mine either.
know, can harbor hair can harbor bacteria. But I take a good saute pan with me. I may take a strainer with me. Uh, I try to take things that are just practical and easy. One time I taught a class on homemade veggie burgers, and I took cookie cutters with me because I like to mold a veggie burger in a cookie cutter so that they're all
Mhm.
the same size and same weight and they'll all cook at the same size. So these are, you just have to kind of think about what will work
Yeah.
and what I like to think, oh, if I did this, it would make it easier for me, and then it will make
Mhm.
things easier for everyone. So I think that is an important thing. And I did give Patrick a few photos of the Charlie cart if anyone would like to see them. And there, you can reach them at charliecart.org, and they're all over Facebook. But when Dan told me the other day that he had been at the rollout of the Charlie cart, he actually heard me gasp because I think the Charlie cart is just, I did gasp. It was such a
You
brilliant
did.
invention, and I will make you laugh. My Charlie cart was donated to the Free Library of Philadelphia by a cold cut company. And so
Oh,
when I
really?
teach, I turn the cart around so that they don't say name of cold cut company, eat more cold cuts, so that they just see so that they just see free library of Philadelphia. But I always
Yeah.
do show my appreciation to them at this
Mhm.
company because, as you know, food can be personal, and I like
Mhm.
to honor the Charlie cart and always show my appreciation to this group. But it has everything that you need, and I have to say, Dan, that teaching at the clinic where I did the CDC grant, they didn't have anything like this. So I schlepped
Yeah.
my own home version of a GE toaster oven that could
Yeah.
cook a cake in it. So I think
Oh,
it,
wow.
you do it seriously, that you do what you have to do, and
Mhm.
um, people, hands on is the way to go. People just love
It
it,
is.
and I think you kind of wrap your passion around what you do and share it with other people. And one more thing, and we could probably have a separate conversation about this, but people always say to me, "Well, how do you get these gigs?" And I should tell you that in my high school class, I wasn't the best dancer, but I was sees all, knows all, and I think that that has carried me through life because
I
I
I could have
meet a
guessed
lot
that
of
about
people.
you.
Anyway, the library where the Charlie cart is located is the ideal because the top floor is a primary care clinic of the Philadelphia Department of Health. So physicians,
Wonderful.
for example, will send me somebody who might be newly diagnosed with type 2 diabetes or hypertension,
Mhm.
and I let them know that I'm not a nutritionist, but I can help them cook healthy food. So docs and nurse practitioners send people to me, and I've been doing that for 9 years. And
Yeah.
I will tell you the funniest story because you don't discover things when you're sitting in your own home, except during COVID. I did a live event for a 501c3, and the next day, the producer of a local TV show called me and asked me if I could do a weekly segment on her show. And then somebody from an ABC affiliate in Scranton, Pennsylvania called, and I did a weekly segment for them as well. So it's where you are and what you do. I love doing pro
Yeah.
bono work. I think pro bono work is such a good thing because you're allowed to show your appreciation for an organization and all the hard work that they do, and you actually help people. So, off my
Yeah.
soapbox.
No, that's great. Yeah, so I think that, we agree on those essential tools. I think it's just good to be able to have kind of a list that I usually make a checklist for myself of things. So first and foremost, I'm always going to bring a knife roll with me. And that knife roll is just simply a bag that rolls up that will keep all your knives and equipment in it. And I have like a small one that I'll bring if I'm doing like catering or something, but I also have a very large one that has multiple knives from multiple people in it. I always bring a huge amount of tasting spoons because we do have to taste our food as we're going along and going through these. So making sure everybody has clean spoons to go with those. You did mention gloves is a great one to be able to have. I typically would always just bring a burner, right? So a burner that has just one of the gas things that go into it. I know that the induction burners are great. They're a little bit more expensive for the induction burners, but a wonderful thing to have. A couple big pans, but one of the things that I always brought because I never had a cart or anything like that, beyond the tools that I would normally just have, I would always bring a tablecloth with me. Just a nice, black tablecloth. I'd typically iron it beforehand so it looks nice. Um, but it's also a great way to be able to clean up at the end of the class, right? So to be able to pick up the whole thing and make it a big bag to be able to put all the stuff into it, so you're not getting food all over the floor and the bottom, as well. So there were a lot of different kind of things, and depending on the recipes that you're doing for the day, you're going to bring different things. It is great to be able to do some of these demonstrations in kitchens where they might actually have access to some things as well. So if you're all going to be doing a pasta sauce or something like that, there are enough places for people to be able to do those. The clinic, like you said, was great. A lot of local organizations really will welcome people coming in to teach. I know that here in Madison, Wisconsin, there are slew of organizations here that have cooking classes, from the local co-ops to different churches and things like that, that will gladly have you come in to be able to do cooking demonstrations for either the people that work there or the congregations, or all kinds of different ways to be able to get that out there. So if you haven't done one yet, definitely start reaching out to some of those people to be able to see if they're interested in them, to be able to get some experience under your belts. So I think that's a great thing to be able to start off with. And I think that getting your mise en place set up, both your ingredients but also your equipment, is a great way to start out. So let's transition a little bit there from going on to the next step of talking about like kinds of things you might want to cook at one of these demonstrations, right? So there are a couple of different ways you can do these. There's a couple, like one is a demonstration versus a hands-on. Hands-on is great. Everybody loves the hands-on because they're actually doing things themselves. But the demonstration ones also have their own place, right? So a lot of times I would do things that were called lunch and learns, right? So I would actually prepare a dish ahead of time. And then, so let's just say it's, I don't know, let's just say it's a pasta dish, right? So I would prepare the pasta dish ahead of time, have it in the back, and then I would show them how to be able to cook this pasta dish. And then as I'm showing it, I had another assistant bring out the one that I had already prepared, and they set it out in front of them. So they're able to eat the dish and learn how to be able to do it at the same time. It was a really popular event that sold out pretty much every time we did it, because it was just long enough where people could be able to, go on their lunch break to be able to watch somebody, do the demonstration and eat their lunch at the same time, and then go home with the printed recipes and be able to do it at home. So there's two different ways to be able to do that, one being the demonstration versus a hands-on consideration. But in those, we have to really start thinking about ahead of time and look at our ingredients, our education, kind of what kind of things we want to be doing in these classes. So a lot of that will become start just with your menu creation, right? So thinking about what you want your theme of the class to be. And I used to do them like each week I would kind of change them, and I might do like an Italian theme, or like maybe I'd do a Thai theme. And then I would do like a Valentine's Day theme, right? So like it kind of depends on what's going on at the moment, to be able to really focus in on something that would really help to engage people. So I think starting off with just your recipe creation, thinking about what you want to do with that class, coming up with a menu list, and then looking to advertise from that menu, saying like, okay, we're going to do these 5 dishes. Probably 3 is a better idea to be able to start with instead of doing 5. And think about what you can physically do in the classroom, right? So like having Char talked about having a little oven kind of a thing would be great, but to be able to make a cake and wait for the time to be able to bake that in the class and then ice it, if you're doing that for 12 people, or 12 different times, might take a little bit of time. So what are the limitations of the space that you're doing it? What are the limitations that you have? Think about those in advance to be able to plan ahead for success at the same time. Do you have anything to add to that, Char?
Two things. One, Dan
Yeah.
had mentioned a checklist. I find that we each have individual tastes and preferences. So, a good thing
Mhm.
for you to do would be to make out your own checklist that reflects the style of your teaching and reflects the style of your work. And, I think demos are also another great way to start out. And I will be honest and say that if I never had exposure to the Charlie cart, my teaching would be very different. However, for 3 summers, I led cooking classes on an inner city farm that was housed by solar electricity that didn't always work. So we were able to take the harvest of the week, and then I would know a few days in advance what the ingredients were, and I would create easy recipes that I knew were available in the grocery stores where people shop. But a checklist is probably going to be your best friend. And Dan, I have to say, and I think this is um, it started at the Charlie cart, and I always say that shindig assignment that you all have is probably one of the best teaching tools in our curriculum because it sets up everything that you want to do for doing events and such. But at the farm, we started out, creating food and so forth. And then we created this place called the Tasting Station, where we would set up tables and tents where people could get their food and get a recipe card and then sit down, and they would stay for hours. So I think that hospitality is another issue or not an issue, it's another joy in teaching classes. But I think the experience of love what you do and you'll never work a day in your life is very, very true. So pay attention to the shindig, because that really does help set you up for creating the mise en place, the presentation of the food. When people say, oh, I feel like I'm at a fancy restaurant, and they're just eating a salad that might have some dill to it. One last thing, Dan. In many communities where I work, visual pictures up on the screen of what a crudité platter might look like, and that the mushrooms aren't sliced paper thin, but they're sliced this way or that way, because many people do not read well and don't understand that instruction, but a picture is worth 1,000 words. So I do rely a lot on photos and videos and other things like that.
Yeah. And I think that there are a couple things too to be able to rely on in those classes. Like, we talked about early on to like having that welcoming space, right? So making sure that everybody feels included in it, that everything's accessible for people too, right? So some people have special needs. You want to make sure that you address that right away to be able to make sure that they can really start building those confidence building skills for them, because you want people walking away from this with a higher level of confidence than when they walked in. I can't tell you how many times I've surveyed people, including Ruby students, when we start off classes. Sometimes we're like, how good are your cooking skills? And they're like, oh, like mine's, a 10 out of 10. And then they start taking the class and they're like, oh my gosh, okay, maybe I'm a 2 out of 10, but you want them at the end of the class to be like, okay, maybe I wasn't a 10, but I'm a solid 8, and I have great room to be able to work and build upon that thing. So I think that that's part of being an instructor, is having that welcoming aspect in it, being really accessible too. And I think it's really important to make sure you're having fun while you're doing it, because the guests that are coming to be able to do this can read that from you. If you're in the weeds and you're completely stressed out as you're doing a class, your students are going to see that, and they're going to feel stressed at the same time, either for you or because they're involved in this thing at the same time. So make sure to be able to kind of go through your checklist, make sure you have everything in its place, and then have fun as you're teaching this. It's okay to make mistakes. And I tell people that all the time. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've burned a dish on accident, even in front of a live audience. But you have to roll with it and have fun with it to be able to say, well, we got to move on from that and do this other thing instead, or I'm going to switch this, or I'm going to take that burnt part off of this and continue on, and we're going to work around it, right? So I think being adaptable in the situation is a really big part of teaching, to be able to make sure that you have successful classes.
I think that that's absolutely 100% on the money, as they say. I did also want to say that one of the things that I love more than anything after teaching a class, and I have developed some tools for people being able to do evaluations who don't have good reading skills, but evaluating a program and getting feedback from your participants is the only way that you grow and learn, so that you can keep honing your skills and benefit from the input of people who were on your every word. And I always, when they come back to me, I'm like, sometimes opening them up like you're opening up a grade from a term paper, and then you see,
sometimes
okay,
they can be harsh too.
Sometimes they can be brutal.
Yes, but it's good to have a thick skin, because it's a learning experience for you at the same time.
Absolutely. It's just like how, as instructors here at Ruby, we evaluate your work and you get, feedback, or as I like to call it, an area of opportunity, rather than, because it sounds so much warmer. But I think that's also, a very vital and influential tool. But I think what I have heard from Dan today, and I think Dan already knows this about me, is that just have fun, because this is so much fun. And you're doing such a good thing by showing people, no matter what kind of cooking you believe in, a cooking class is just a wonderful social tool, and it's a wonderful educational tool. And people need to know how to cook. Learning how to cook is probably going to save everybody, because everyone should know how to cook and not eat out of a can or a processed bag or something like that. But that's a different soapbox for me. Plan your menu, know your ingredients. And I wanted to also say, and Dan has heard me complain about this, is that I like to go visit a place before, not so much for the layout in the land, but I like to check out the parking, because if you have really awful parking, it is going to set the tone for a difficult day. So for this reason, I have one of those collapsible canvas wagons, so that if I have to walk 2 blocks in the city to get to my destination, I'm kind of relaxed, because everything is snugly packed into my wagon. But have a parking app on your phone if you're teaching in the city and there isn't a parking lot available. Those little kinds of tidbits really do help make the experience so much better. So plan your menu,
Yeah.
but most of all, have lots of fun. What else,
Yeah.
Dan?
I think, adding on top of that, just planning your menu out, I think that a really important to think about, or a really important part to think about, is to start slow, right? It's a lot of people will be like, these grand ambitions to be able to do this 10-course meal or something like that. Definitely don't do that. Start with maybe two things to be able to say, like, I'm going to make these two things. We're going to learn how to make these very, very well. Try not to introduce some crazy ingredients you can only get from Madagascar at a tiny little bodega or something like that. Like, so start it slow. Start with what you know very well. And then kind of build upon it from there as well. I think one of the most common mistakes that instructors do for these things is they're going to make way too many recipes, and they're going to have poor timing, right? So looking to be able to keep things really short and concise as you start out is really the key here. And then you can build upon it the more experience you get, and understand that you might take 4 steps forward and you might have to take one back before you get to 5, because um, things change, right? Every single class that you teach has completely different people in it. And you have to realize at the same time, too. I can't tell you how many times I've had the one student that asks 50 million questions that puts me 30 minutes behind in my cooking, because I'm always asking these questions of them, which is great. I want them to be able to learn, but you also have to adapt to be able to say, like, okay, I'm going to answer this question as I'm still doing this technique or teaching this thing. And you'll start to build this toolbox for yourself of ways to be able to interact with your students and continue the class going. And that's part of your timing, to be able to really look at the problem solving and being able to pivot very quickly on those too. So when you are starting these things out, just remember to take it slow, take it easy on yourself, and make sure you try to track your timing. Make sure you see a clock too. If you can have a clock on the wall, or if you just want to set up your phone or something like that to make sure there's a clock on it, to be able to make sure that you're on time. You want to make sure that you're fitting it within the parameters of what you set up. Speaking of, we're at about 50 minutes into this chart, so I think that we might want to transition a little bit into some of our questions,
Oh my,
and we can go into some of
my
our closing
goodness.
steps too. I know it went by quick, didn't it?
It did. Can I just say one important thing? If the recipes that
Absolutely.
you are if the recipes that you are using are not your own, and you have them from a cookbook, a best practice is you can write the recipe and write, reprinted with permission by author Jane Doe. You can these days, you can send Jane Doe a quick email or DM her on Instagram or whatever and say, "Hey, I'm a chef instructor. I'm going to be using your recipe for blah blah blah. Do you mind if I use it?" because I teach in a lot of libraries, and in libraries, everything is very, on the book, so to speak. So make sure that you do get permission from authors if you're not using an original recipe.
Yeah, absolutely. And then most people are super ecstatic, especially if you give them credit. If you put their website on the recipe or something like that, to be like,
Oh,
if you want to learn
yeah.
more from this chef, go to this website and they have great recipes. Just highly recommend them, and tell them that you're going to be using the recipe too. To be like, say,
Mhm.
like, I'm teaching this class. I'm going to put your website on here and highly recommend you and show you how to show that. So, and put their social stuff on there too. So
Mhm.
the students you're teaching can go down as many rabbit holes as they want to be
Mhm.
able to learn more about the subject you're teaching.
Mhm. Yep. We're selling books.
Absolutely. Books and clicks on websites. So,
Exactly.
as we wrap up here before our questions, I hope you are feeling encouraged to be able to really pick up the mantle, pick up the knife and cutting board yourself. Teaching doesn't have to be perfect. It's just has to be intentional and fun. Make sure that you're having a clear setup. You're thoughtfully planning out everything, and your genuine love for teaching will show as you're doing this, right? So just remember to incorporate that. For every hour of teaching, there are 3 hours of prep, just like Char said before. You have your planning, your shopping, your creating, your dishes as well. You can't forget to do the dishes afterward as well. Usually your students aren't going to help you with the dishes, so think about that. Think about your printouts, your handouts. So leaving time for that cleanup as well too. So as we transition into our questions, do you want to add anything else, Char, to that?
One minor thing, because if you're not at a library and you wanted to print recipes and then you go to Kinko's and it gets expensive. So what I do is I say to them, I have your email address. I'll be sending you a note with the recipes attached. I write them a thank you note, tell them, put a little points in about what we did, and attached for your review and use, you will please find today's recipes. And that kind of like cuts out that whole thing of having to go someplace to
That's
print, and
that's a
makes
very
it
good
easy.
point. And even
Yeah.
for today too. So we've had a couple pictures that have gone up on the screens. Shar, do you want to tell them where they might be able to find some of those examples later?
Oh, you know what we're going to do? Because Dan and I collected a bunch of photos. We're going to upload them onto our Instagram account and our all of our Facebook accounts. We are on Instagram, and you'll find us at Ruby Plants, and you'll see all of the pictures from Dan in action to what it looks like to set up for a class in an inner city, or even on the main line, the toniest neighborhood in Philadelphia. So there we go. Know your
Mhm.
audience and have fun.
Fantastic. Well, let's transition into our questions here. I see we have quite a number of them. I'm going to start out here with Kristen. Kristen is asking, exciting event theme, loving it. Do you have any tips for taking cooking video shots, hopefully from one angle camera, to get sight for what's cooking and me without needing a cameraman? Shar, do you have a good answer for that one?
I do. And when I was studying social media marketing at University of the Arts, I took a food photography course with a food stylist from New York City. So the best thing I can offer to you is having good light. Good lighting is the most important. When I was a Ruby student, I sometimes would cook at night, but wouldn't take my photos till 4:30 in the afternoon in my kitchen because the natural lighting was so perfect. The other thing is a steady handheld camera will do. I have this, which is a suction cup. It has the strongest magnet in the world, so that when you are taking photos, you can put this on your cabinet and then get a really good flat lay of your mise en place and have things look terrific. However, when I am teaching, I use this, and it is a camera holder that you wear around your neck. And I wrap the back in a towel so it stays stationary. I put my phone in here, and then I wrap a piece of duct tape around it just because I don't want anything falling into a canister of soup or whatever. So natural lighting is your best friend. A good tripod or something that is steady, and taking it generally at a 45-degree angle. That's what we recommend in the course as well. And just having fun taking pictures with photos. Think of different backgrounds. I have a whole container a big container filled with different plates and silverware and cups and all kinds of things, so that it gives the photos some seasonality or fits the mood of what you're trying to do. But there are lots of articles online that you might find very helpful. And lastly, this, believe it or not, is a tripod, and it converts into a selfie stick. So if you're teaching a class with people and you want to take a group photo, it extends all the way, and then everyone loves being in the photo together. So best light,
Yeah.
good light is your best friend. So great question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, one thing I always like to is I always tell people to take lots of pictures while they're doing it and then post to
Mhm.
the social that you pick, right? So it could be if you're
Mhm.
teaching at the library, have them post it to there. You could have it post them to your own Instagram or your own socials too. So great ways to be able to really get different camera angles that you might not be able to get because you're teaching. It's also a great way to get pictures of you teaching that you might not be able to grab because it's hard to take a picture of yourself while you're cooking. So great question, Kristen. All right, our next question here is from Christy F. What is the best way to train your palate or teach palate training? So Char has a link to this one, but I'm going to kind of go over it a little bit too, just from some of my past experience. One thing we used to teach a lot is that the tongue is actually the fastest healing organ in the body. It actually takes 7 days to be able to retrain your palate just by switching the way you're eating. A great example of this that I'd always give was salt. So if you say go to a favorite, restaurant and you get your French fries or whatever beforehand, and you go in and you eat your French fries and they're just totally normal and you're like, wow, these are delicious. And then you decide for an entire week, for 7 days, I'm not going to have any salt at all. Your tongue will actually completely transform during those 7 days to adapt to a lower sodium tolerance. So, if you go to the exact same restaurant 7 days later, we'll say 8 days later, and you go there and you order the same plate of French fries, you'll find that they're unbelievably salty compared to the week before when you tried it. So, training your palate is something you can do just by adapting the different flavors and the different foods that you're eating. So, salt is one of those big ones because, as a chef focused on healthy eating, it was something that a salt reduction was something we wanted to do. And I personally don't really add a lot of salt to my food. I'll usually do it to pasta water if I'm cooking pasta, but otherwise I'm not putting a lot of salt in my food. And I always say there's a salt shaker on every table in America. People want to add salt to their food, they can do it themselves. But to start with kind of a baseline with very low sodium is a great way to do that. Now, as far as going beyond that, training your palate, it's great to be able to try different things and try them three things. In fact, I do this with my kids all the time. They might try something and they're like, oh, I don't like that. And it's like, okay, well, you will in three more tries, right? Because it takes a while for your tongue to adapt to those, to be able to get those sensations and the flavors from those. So your palate will eventually adapt the more you're trying into that. And Shar, I know you posted a link here. Do you want to talk about that one a little bit?
It was a quick, easy article, but I think your practical tips really are the concrete foundation to that question. And I will say that everything that Dan said is absolutely true, because after having been plant based for my first 30 days, and then I went out to a regular restaurant ordering plant based food, and I had to send it back to the kitchen because it was so salty to me. But probably not having salt for 30 days did that. So,
Yeah, it's
yes,
amazing.
change moves mountains. Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah.
All right, let's go on to our next one here. This one's from Betty. What is a reasonable charge for an individual and attendees? How do you figure out what to charge? I'm asking for more virtual attendees, both pre-recorded and live streaming on YouTube. All right, so from my own personal experience, do you want me to tackle this one, Shar, or do you have a quick answer for it?
I have a easy practical way, but I think it's good to hear both sides of the coin, so to speak.
Why don't you give it a start, ladies first?
Give yourself an hourly rate of what you would pay yourself. If you spend $20 for ingredients, you're going to charge $40 for the ingredients because you want to profit on the ingredients that you bought. You're going to include shopping time, which is an hour. Well, for me, it's an hour. Travel time to and from, which is an hour. Prep time, which might be 2 hours, and teaching time, which is 2 hours. So you have accumulated, I think, 6 hours. So you would multiply 6 times 25, which is 150, I believe. And so I charge for a full class. So if I'm teaching in Timbuktu, they set the rate for what a participant will pay. A lot of my classes are free, and they don't pay anything. But an interesting thing happened to me last week. Somebody who comes to my high end classes where they spend $75 a class, they came to my free class and they were like, oh, we should have just been coming here. So I do a lot of pro bono classes so that I can pay for I do these charge classes. I do them so that I can pay for ingredients when I do pro bono classes. Give yourself an hourly rate and itemize everything that it is that you do. So
Mhm.
when I first started out as a new graduate at Ruby and I thought I was charging a lot of money, I would charge $125 for a group class. And came to learn out that when you put 6 to 10 hours of putting something together, that you really had to treat yourself. You have to treat yourself fairly so that you don't become resentful with something that you really love to do. So if anybody wants to talk to me offline, I'm happy to share some other tidbits. So I
Yeah.
see that
That's
our friend Anne Marie in Delaware, who's a grad, and she even came to a book signing event so that she could meet Fran and I at the event. And she's doing wonderful work as an advocate in her community in Milford, Connecticut. I'm sorry, Milford, Delaware. So anyway, go ahead, Dan. Let's hear what yours is.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's great. I think it really comes down to knowing your audience, right? So, just in the way, the audience at the library versus, like Whole Foods or something like that. So, if I was doing a cooking demonstration at a church, I'm probably going to do it for just what the expenses are for
Mhm.
the food, to be able to kind of promote, right? That's typically what you do. Or you might set a base price for yourself for the church or something like that and say, I'd love to do it for this. This will cost $150 and I'll do this class. It'll be like, um, and that'll kind of lead to more work. What it
Mhm.
does is kind of works your way to the higher end classes as you well. So, or as you had mentioned. So, your classes might get more expensive, but you also need to make them reasonable enough where people will come to them. Because if you're charging $250 per class, you're going to have a very small number of people that could afford to be able to do that, or that will be like, yeah, that's actually worth it to be able to do it. Especially if people don't know who you are yet. If you start to be able
Mhm.
to become known in your community as a great chef, and this is a wonderful thing to be able to go do, you can charge a little bit more. But think about
Mhm.
what she said before. It was like, think about what your ingredients are, what you'd be paid, how much that is, and then divide it up by how many people, and think about how many people you need to be able to get there to be able to make your money back. And I'll
Mhm.
typically say it's going to be, at least twice as much as the hourly rate as I would be to be able to make that. So if I don't sell out the class, I still have some wiggle room in those as well. Now, Betty, you asked more for virtual attendees, both pre-recorded and live streaming. That's an entirely different avenue because you can sell that same class thousands of times,
Mhm.
right? So typically on virtual, being pre-recorded or live streaming, you kind of eat the cost to be able to start out, right? So you're like, okay, I'm going to spend this much on that. It's going to take me this many hours to be able to set up, and then the actual class itself. You have to think in the same thing. How many of these do you think I could virtually sell, right? And so you want to think about that, and probably because it's not live, it's not a hands-on. You want it to be a much smaller amount than it would be in a live class. You're not going to be charging $250 for something that somebody might do in the live demonstration that would be right in front of you, depending on the audience, right? So it's a little bit different for that avenue, and the expertise and how well known you are, right? So if you have a large following, you're able to charge a little bit more for some of those things too. So I see
Dan,
Anne Marie is our
sorry.
next question there, which is great. So should we move on to that next one? Sure.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one other thing about expenses. If you are,
Sure.
say, giving a class at a church, if you feel comfortable and know this organization, you can ask them if you can use their 501c3 certificate so that you can go shopping and buy things without having to pay taxes. Or, and you may remember from your Whole Food Market days, when they would donate cold produce to different organizations, if that organization that you work with has an affiliation with a 501c3, you may be able to get your produce free. And it's a great way to teach blemished food that still tastes delicious, using full food utilization. So check out the 501c3 and see if that's something that you can also use.
That's a very good point. Yep. All right. So Anne Marie says, I've been asked many times to demonstrate whole food plant-based cooking, and I've done some classes, but don't want to reinvent the wheel. This is excellent. Great. Our
Oh,
next
that's
question
nice.
here, that's sweet, is from Dijon. What's the best food you cooked? Let's take that as, what's the best thing you made at a cooking demonstration? Char, what's one of your favorite dishes that you made at a cooking demonstration?
Two. Number one,
Two.
mac and cheese that's made with braised parsnips, carrots, onions, nutritional yeast, vegetable broth. Makes the best mac and cheese. People love it. And number two is whole wheat pizza dough wrapped in hickory flavored carrots, dogs, and so that you have healthy pigs in a blanket. Because
That's super cute.
familiarity is the best key. So, yeah,
That's
that's a
fantastic.
great question. Yeah.
I would have to say one of mine was probably the Valentine's Day event that I talked about earlier. I used to do a Valentine's Day event every year, and I'd always do holiday themed ones. But one year I decided to reinvent Julia Child's beef bourguignon, but do it with seitan instead. And so we made a seitan bourguignon as our main dish. And we also, I think we actually made a baguette in that same class, and then did chocolate dipped strawberries at the end. But the bourguignon turned out fantastic, and it was such a fun event to be able to do with everybody. All right. Our next question here is from Karen. This is such a great gig. Does the community pay for this, or do participants have to pay? If I may ask, does it bring you enough income to cover you? So that depends on the situation, Karen. The community specialists sometimes will pay for events like this. Typically, it's going to be the participants that are paying to be able to do it. And then, as Char said, a lot of times they're free too, right? So if you're looking to make enough to cover you, that's kind of the goal. You want to make sure that you're covering the food costs in some way to be able to make sure that you're not just losing money doing these. Sometimes you don't, though, and that's okay. It really depends on how you look at it. Is it advertising for a business that you're starting? Great. But, it is something that kind of fluctuates, and it can be a business on its own. I had the fortunate position to be able to be doing it for Whole Foods Market, for a number of years, where I was doing it at the grocery store and then at a teaching center there. And then I did it for different, when I first started doing whole food plant-based cooking, was 20 years ago, and it was pretty not as well known as it is now. So I was hired by a lot of culinary schools to be able to go in and show them like no oil techniques, cooking techniques, and how to be able to do plant-based stuff, because in a lot of culinary schools they weren't doing any kind of plant-based options. So they would hire me to come in for a week or two to be able to show their students on how to do this, because it wasn't something that was really covered. So it's really situational, Karen. So kind of depends on what you make of it yourself. All right, Betty, what
Can
is
I chime in?
considered a, of course.
I just wanted to chime in and say that one of the things that I find very helpful is to have a not-for-profit fee structure and a for-profit fee structure. And it takes a lot of work, and you have to put your pedal to the metal, or the metal to the pedal, whatever it goes, to establish a reputation and a name, and always feel proud of your work and secure that your value is whatever it is. People are hungry for good education by qualified instructors who really have a handle on whatever it is. So do a little work, do some homework, put your name out there, do some pro bono work, and then have that foundation that brings you joy and financial security, and you can make it work.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Betty, what is considered a reasonable charge for an attendee? So I think we've gone over that a little bit. It really kind of depends on what you're making, the time involved in that as well too. So I'll let you refer back to the question that we had answered a little earlier. Oh, here's a great one from Lai. If alcohol is in the ingredients for a recipe, is it for taste only? Example, vanilla. If I prepare without alcohol, what differences can I expect? So I'll start with this. Typically, alcohol is added as a either a flavor enhancer or preservative for food. So in vanilla, in particular, it helps kind of expand the vanilla flavor out a little bit. But by and large, it's usually used for to preserve the flavor that's in that. And there are a wide variety of examples of that are alcohol free, which I will let Char take over on that question.
The brand is Frontier. The flavorings are glycerin based rather than alcohol. They're perfectly delicious. You need to use less of them. And I had a bottle here like a second ago, and a gremlin came and took it away. But Frontier is the brand. My favorites are lemon, maple, and vanilla, but they have peppermint and all kinds of things. I will let you know that it is a 3-ounce bottle, and it generally runs about $8. So that's just an FYI. I don't use alcohol, and one time went to a wedding and there was a raw dessert. So if you're making raw desserts, you definitely want to use alcohol free, especially if someone might have an alcohol sensitivity. So great question.
Yeah. Our next one's from Robert. Overcooking garlic can wreck a dish. What is your rule of thumb when you add it? The exercise certainly raised my awareness, and now I'm guarded about when I add it and under what heat situation. Yeah. So, in my personal experience, I'll usually add garlic kind of near the end of the dish, or when there's kind of a lot more into it. Like if you're just doing like a caramelization of onions and you add the garlic to it, you can sometimes overburn or overheat that garlic. So I'll typically add my garlic a little at the end of the dish, so it still has time to cook a little bit, but it's not going to come in too much direct contact with the pan to be able to make that flavor expand out through the dish, but make sure you're not going to burn it. Char, as a chef, would you recommend that kind of same technique, or do you have a little extra to add?
With you 100%. Garlic is a low moisture vegetable, and that's why it burns so quickly. So also make sure that your garlic is fresh, because if your garlic is old, it'll even be drier. So if you follow the no oil recipe, the sequence of that teaches how not to burn garlic in the best way, as well as the garlic assignment with the 2 different vessels of not burnt and burnt, where it can be a deep, dark brown or black. So, hi, Robert.
Yeah, which, I mean, you can also get a deep, dark black garlic by doing black garlic, which is a dehydration technique, which is quite different, and it tastes beautiful compared to a burnt garlic at the same time. So, yeah. Our next question is from Lai. In baking and pastry making, it is important to have a general understanding of the role of ingredients, especially the primary ones of flour, eggs, sugar, butter, or fat, and liquids in regards to ratios. It absolutely is, Lai. I think that baking is one of those things that I consider an exact science. You need to have precise measurements of all of your ingredients to be able to make sure that the the final dish comes out the way it should. In cooking something like doing a saute or a stir fry or the rules are much more loose. You can go outside the lines and color outside the lines as much as you want to. And by the end, you're probably still going to have a great dish. But if you're adding too much fat or too much butter or too much baking powder or something to a dish or a baking dish, it's going to dramatically change the outcome of that dish. So, especially on baking and pastry, make sure that you're really following the recipe on those to be able to get the best quality final recipe.
Mhm.
Anything to add to that, Char?
Just that if you're using sunflower butter as your nut butter for an ingredient, do not be freaked out when your cookies or your banana bread turn Hulk green.
Yes, it's quite interesting, isn't it? Karen, how do restaurants perceive of 60 plus applicants? Is it even worth applying? What are some other options for food related work for the over the hill game? You're never over the hill. You're just uh, wiser than most, right, Karen? Shar, I'm going to let you answer that as being a 60 or over person to be able to say
And
what you think.
I'm sure we both remember Karen from Veg Chef, where she made the most beautiful food. And
Oh,
it was
nice.
always a joy, right? It was always a
Yeah.
joy to review Karen's work. So I have a friend who was the director of culinary at a major university near my house. And his motto was this: show me how you walk and I'll see how you work. And he said to me one day, oh, I'd hire you in a minute. Meaning that um, it isn't about the age, it's about your skill, your person, your passion, and what you do. If you do not choose to go the traditional route of working in a restaurant or whatever, there are opportunities for food writing on websites and in color, in plant-based magazines. Um, you can make and sell food. This has been very profitable for many, many people. I will tell you that for about a year, I made food for somebody who was on a very strict whole food, plant-based, no oil, no salt diet. But it wasn't fun because I had to make almost the same things every week. And I gave them a 6 week notice that I wouldn't be able to, do this for the rest of my life. But look for avenues for cooking. There are today, the internet provides you with resources and ideas for taking whatever it is that you do to the next level. So the
Yeah.
funniest thing is, and Dan will remember this, after my shindig, I made a beautiful veggie burger and I had a few of them left over and I took them to a friend and I said, I know you're gluten free, blah, blah, blah. Enjoy these burgers. They're on me. And a week later, she called and said, hey, my little coffee shop needs a veggie burger. Can you make these for us? And so every week I made 60 veggie burgers. And by the end of about 3 months, I thought, I can't make another veggie burger at all. So find your passion, find your balance, and do what you love.
Yeah, and I do have to say, with the restaurant industry and the way it is right now, I think most restaurants would be thrilled to have you, not only because of your experience, but also because as somebody over 60, you have a work ethic that a lot
Mhm,
of a younger generation doesn't have at the moment.
mhm,
So I think that that is actually something that's advantageous to you. So don't sell yourself short. Try any restaurant
mhm,
you want to. You can
mhm,
explore a little bit too. It was a common practice for chefs just out of culinary school to be able to do something called a stage, where they went to different
mhm.
restaurants to be able to improve upon their skills, and they would work at those different restaurants for a period of like 3 to 4 months to be able to learn what they could off of those restaurants and go to other ones. I highly recommend to be able to do that still, to be able to improve upon your skills. And don't just think about the ones that are right next door. Maybe think about going something a little bit farther away, or even doing like like cruise ships or something like that would be great. All of these opportunities are great things to be able to look for, no matter how old you are.
Oh,
Right.
cruise ship. That sounds fun.
Oh
Sounds
yeah,
great.
I've had a couple friends that did that, and it was a great way to see the world. A lot of work, but definitely a lot of fun too. So I love
Mhm.
this one. Anna Marie says, Chef Shar, I'd be glad to be your assistant if you need one. So I think that you you might have an assistant to be able to help you out here with the Charlie cart there. And
I
another one
wanted to
from
tell I wanted to tell Anne Marie that I will come and be her assistant when she starts teaching more classes. So there you go, Anne Marie.
fantastic. I love that. And then Karen's asking, will this content be available afterward on YouTube or another platform? And Karen, yes, we always record all of these. You'll be able to find them on our YouTube platform, and then you can also find them in our archives on the Ruby website. So you can actually probably just search Instructor Playbook after this course. Probably give us 24 to 48 hours to be able to make sure that it's all in the system, and you'll be able to go through, rewind, and find your place on this class to be able to have any questions for that. So you can also link it out if you want to share it with somebody else. You can always share it to them as well. So that being said, I think we're going to close up here. What do you think, Shar?
Well, this was so much fun, wasn't it? I had a
It
great
was.
time, and
I'm
the
so glad we don't
questions
have to
were.
do the dishes afterward, too.
Well, Dan, I will share that my participants do the dishes, and not because I request. They just let's give Chef Shar a hand so she can get out of here quicker, and
I
so
love
they do
that.
the dishes every week. So I always feel blessed and fortunate about that. So I'm going to throw some roses at Dan and say thank you so much, Dan, for doing this with me. I think it was a ton of fun, and if you want us to
It
do this
was.
again, let us know, email, whatever. And I think the closing takeaway is looking at all of your questions. I felt as though you were truly invested in wanting to take your tools from Ruby and take them out to the street to people, know your audience, but more importantly than anything else, love what you do, because that shines through and that becomes the best marketing tool you could ever invent for yourself. So I'm signing off
Absolutely.
and turning it back to Dan.
Well, thank you so much. It's always such a pleasure to work with you, Shar. I love when we get to be able to do these kinds of things together. So hopefully we get to do a lot more in the future.
Mhm,
And to our
mhm,
audience, thank you so much for spending the time with us during this Ruby Live event. We really appreciate your energy, your questions, and all your
mhm,
interest in teaching cooking demonstrations. We
mhm.
have a lot more information and a lot of other things to be able to come in the future. So I hope you join us. Happy cooking.